morning, my name is Councillor Vikki Slade. Welcome to the first of the new Leader Q&A live on various streams. Forgive me, this is my first one since we did this in COVID, when I was literally in my living room doing it on my laptop through Facebook. So it's all got a bit more sophisticated. If I'm looking in the wrong directions because my notes aren't where they would normally be. I'm sat in the council offices today, but they will be done from wherever I am, whether that be home or out and about in future. The format, for those of you that haven't been seeing them recently, is that we do have some questions who've come in advance, and we will be taking questions throughout. I'll be doing my best to keep up with everything that you're asking. Those of you that haven't come across me before, I do do my very best to make sure that we're honest and open with you. That is the mark of this new Three Towns Alliance administration. So before we get into the questions, just very brief update on where we are. Although the elections took place at the beginning of May, the leadership election didn't happen until the 23rd of May. So that's just 2 weeks ago. So myself and the cabinet have only had 2 weeks in the job. And during that time, we've been busy trying to meet with the officers to understand the lay of the land. Lots of the information that we're getting, we're hearing for the first time, because the way the council operates is that the administration has access to a lot of information that is background. So we are catching up as quickly as we can, and we will be going out with lots of announcements about our priorities over the coming weeks. So to get us started, we did ask people to submit some questions, and we do have a series of questions. The first question I think we have is from John Smith. And John was asking whether council intends to make our car parks pay by app only. No is the simple answer. We do know that Bournemouth Council, one of the predecessors, did make a decision prior to BCP being formed to take away various means of payment from some of their car parks. Retrofitting those car parks, would be hugely expensive, but we do intend to keep the options of using your card, and the pay by phone option is still there. So if you don't have an app, and lots of people don't, if you're anything like me, I generally run out of data, so that's my biggest issue. You can phone up the app company and pay that way, or you should be able to use any sort of chip and pin card in our machines. So no, there's no intention of doing that. Lara asked a question about Poole Quay. We know that a number of events have been cancelled, and I think what's fair to say is there are different reasons why events get cancelled. I run a big event in my area, and I have to say the organisation is so stressful, so difficult to try and get everybody on board, and sometimes it becomes impossible to get enough traders to be able to cover your costs. Sometimes you have issues in getting the land holding sorted out. So the events that have been cancelled for different reasons, some of which have involved not being able to meet the requirements that are put in place either by the council or the landowner, and some simply because they're just not viable or workable. But we are really excited that there are new events coming forward, not just on the quay, but Beta, Poole Park and other places. And we're very, very keen that communities get involved with organising events as we go forward. So that is a huge priority. And a big plug, if you're around in Broadstone, Sunday the 2nd of July, Broadstone Fun Day, I highly recommend it. Aaron on Twitter, who is a regular communicator with me on Twitter, can I confirm that fines will be given to those dropping litter? So you will have been aware, if you've been watching things, that the council has a contractor called Wise that it's been using for some time for fly tipping. They now have the contract for litter, and there are fines being given. £150 fine, on the spot fine, which is reduced, as with other fines, if it's paid very quickly. There's been a bit of stress about where those fines are being given. and there have been some criticisms about the company giving fines on private land. That's all been clarified now, but they are acting as agents of the council. So the simple answer is don't drop litter. If you do have somebody come up to you and say that, we've witnessed you doing that, then, you could be liable for a fine. I don't have the details on how many fines have been given so far, but that will go through a process of review. So I'm sure that when the scrutiny department asks to see whether that's been a successful project, we will be able to produce the information about how many fines have been given. And fundamentally, whether having the fines in place has led to less people dropping litter, because that's the goal at the end of the day. It's not about making money, it's about reducing the amount of litter and respecting the place more. There's loads of questions coming in, but I'm going to get through the pre-selected ones just so that we don't miss them, because they won't be coming up on my screen. Nigel was asking a question about buses. So I think Nigel's concerned about not being as many night buses as there used to be. Recently, we were able to announce a new bus route extension for the number 18, which is now going to be running on a Sunday and half hourly rather than hourly. The reason that bus was able to be introduced is because we got external funding, or the bus company got external funding to introduce additional routes. Most bus routes are only available to run if they are commercially viable. The council has 3 routes that it subsidises at the moment, and then obviously there's the school bus routes. In order to introduce more buses at night or to new locations, we would either have to have more external funding, or we would have to find that money from within the existing budgets, or the bus company would be able to decide to trial something because they think it's commercially viable. Personally, I'd love to see more buses everywhere, and the team have been asked to bid as often as they can for funding to bring in more buses. But as you will hear consistently, the financial situation the council's been left in is pretty difficult, and anything we decide we're going to start spending mentally mean having to stop doing something else. So there needs to be a good, viable reason for the night buses to run. And if they're not running, it's probably because they're not currently viable. But that is something that, we'd love to see back. More bus, if you're listening, if you could trial something, that would be fantastic. Steve asked a question. Steve from Creekmore asked, can all future resident surveys be conducted in a meaningful way? I think what Steve's probably saying is that in the past, some of the questions have been asked with a decision made about what the answer is that we want. My response to that is we are fundamentally overhauling the way that we do our surveys. We need to ask various bits of information. There's been some criticism about why so many personal information. We need all that information, but we need to be asking open questions that allow people to tell us what they really think. Sometimes we can't give a free option for, every option isn't on the table. And I think where that's the case, we need to be more clear about that. If it is an option between A or B, we need to make it clear that it's A or B. I can tell you that we are going to be announcing very soon a new consultation on Bournemouth Town Centre. We're really aware, elephant in the room. Everybody is telling us something needs to change. My view is we aren't listening enough to people. We want to ask people what they would like to see in Bournemouth Town Centre, and that open consultation will happen very, very soon. The other big consultation that's coming up will be the corporate strategy refresh. If you go back to 2019, we had a really good piece of consultation where we went out to communities and we asked people what they thought. And that's the style of consultation we'll be doing as often as we can, making sure that the consultations get through all of those groups that we don't normally reach. So how do we reach young people and children? How do we reach students? How do we reach groups that perhaps don't have English as a first language or don't tend to engage because they don't feel they're going to be listened to? So yeah, absolutely, really proper consultation is a key, and we want scrutiny. So we will be encouraging questions at council meetings. We're looking at ways that we hopefully will be able to move to having the technology in time where you don't have to come to the council meeting to ask a question, where you can do it remotely. But at the moment, we don't have the tech to do it. So bear with us. We do want you to be involved in those decisions. Final advanced question is from Peter. And Peter was asking about reform of future places. So future places, for those who don't know, is the council's urban regeneration company that was set up a couple of years ago. Now, let's be honest, we have to do lots and lots of regeneration of sites that are going to take a lot longer than 4 years to do. And taking it out of the political cycle of elections every 4 years will hopefully stop people from stop, start. So there is a really good reason to have future places. It's got off to a terrible start. There's no trust, and the mission creep of everything that they've been doing is just gone a bit crazy. So there was an independent review commissioned with a chap who used to be the head of the civil service, Lord Bob Kerslake. He's currently doing his review, and we've asked him to narrow the focus on the really big, important strategic sites that we need to get right, and to stop doing some of the stuff which isn't delivering any income to the council and isn't delivering homes. So we will be waiting to see the results of his review, which we're hoping to have in the next few weeks. We've also asked him to look at whether it needs a rebrand. That's not about spending more money. It's about focusing its attention on delivery and bringing some of the services that it's been offering back into the council, so the council is the council's company and not going off and doing its own thing. So you asked the question, how long? Very soon, hopefully in the later part of the summer. There was a question at 12:33, I think, was it from Mark, that I saw go past, and it was relating to the awful accident last week. Mark, I'm not surprised you have worried customers wanting to know if it's safe to go in the water. We're all absolutely devastated for the young people that died last week and their families, and also the people who were hurt. I had a gentleman contact me who said he was on the beach, he witnessed it, he's feeling traumatized through what he witnessed. First and foremost, our hearts go out to those families, and our thanks go out to those people who helped, right from the emergency services to our beach staff, the RNLI, and the people on the beach who behaved so responsibly. The question about, is it safe to go in the water? Water is a hazard, we know that. And there is always a risk when we get in the water, particularly if it's water that we don't know, particularly if it's something we're not used to. So the advice remains that swim and go in the water on lifeguarded beaches, go between the flags. That's where the RNLI have deemed that it's safest to do so. Make sure that if you're going in the water, somebody on the shore knows where you are. Usual things: don't drink alcohol and go in the water. Act responsibly. If you see someone in distress, make sure that you tell somebody. We don't know the circumstances of the accident at the moment, but there was an announcement through the coroners yesterday about the possibility of a riptide. The advice, if you do get caught in a riptide, whether it's here or on holiday or visiting somewhere else, is, and it's easy to say, is don't panic. The advice is that you relax and try to lay on your back, because you're far less likely to get into trouble. I'm not an expert, but that sounds like pretty good advice to me. And I think if in doubt, go and speak to the lifeguards and ask the lifeguards if they consider that it's safe. If they don't consider it safe, the red flags will be flying. And encourage your customers, Mark, to don't go in the water if the red flags are flying, or if there's no lifeguards and people don't feel confident. I think that's probably as much as we can say until we get the outcome of the investigation. What I will say, though, is that the council are working with its partners, including the RNLI, to make sure that as the information comes out and as any advice comes out, that we make sure that Bournemouth remains, and Poole and Christchurch remains, as safe as it possibly can be, both on the water and off the water. So I'm going to go to Jeff Beck, 1243. Parking in Poundbury is free. Yes, there are reasons. I don't know if you want to bring the question up. Thank you very much. Question really about parking and independent retailers. So I think that the idea that parking is a throttle on businesses is only part of the question. In order for people to come to a town, there needs to be a good reason to come to a town. And I've already explained that we're opening up a consultation on Bournemouth Town Centre, because I will gladly pay decent money to park somewhere if I'm going to have a great experience. You know, there are towns and cities around the country that have parking charges that are more than Bournemouth, and people pay it because they know that they're going to have a great time. I think where they get frustrated is where the parking services aren't up to scratch and they don't feel safe, or where they pay the parking and there then isn't enough there for them to enjoy. So I think it's a little bit simple to say, it's a throttle on business. Dorchester is not Bournemouth. Dorchester is a reasonably small town, and Dorchester doesn't have much of a nighttime economy. Parking is an income for the council. If we remove our parking income, there will be a massive hole that needs to fund related matters. And fundamentally, the council has to make ends meet. So we need to drive more independent retailers. We need to drive things that are other than retail. Retail is a changing place. And at the moment, our focus is on trying to make Bournemouth, Poole and Christchurch destinations for people, rather than just being the retail places that they've been in the past. So let's go. So Anthony was the first question out at 12:32, was asking what are the plans for Bournemouth Town Centre. I'm not going to go into too much detail because actually we want to hear from you. So watch out in the next couple of weeks for this consultation. It will be a very, very light touch question to start with, because what we don't want to do is to tell you what we're going to do for Bournemouth. What we want to do is hear your ideas, your thoughts. We'll then work with our partners. We'll be working with the bids, with the university, with the businesses, with the landlords, with the tourist agencies, everybody, to actually say, what is it we need to do for the future? So really be helpful if we didn't describe things publicly as being grim. I know I've probably been guilty of it as well as everybody else, but we need to try and start talking up our towns and go, actually, on a sunny day, this place is amazing. There are some brilliant businesses here. We need more of them, but we're not likely to get the investment if we keep talking it down as grim. Joanne Keeling, 1233, has been asking about a development that's in Talbot Heath. You know what? This is a real contentious issue. For those of you that don't know about it, this is a site owned by the Talbot Village Trust next to the university. Part of the site is currently an urban farm. Part of it is space that's sort of sitting a little bit vacant. It is alongside Talbot Heath, which is a site of special scientific interest, and we need to make sure that those sites are protected. The difficulty we've got is that it's not land owned by BCP Council, and the land was put into it is development land by Borough of Poole, which is, although people think of it as being Bournemouth, it's Borough of Poole area from before LGR. Under that local plan, and just for clarity, because we haven't been in our post very long, under that local plan, the local plan allocated that for development. I'm going to be a bit political for a moment here because it's important you know the context. The council was a Conservative council at that point, and all of the opposition councillors voted against the local plan. That's really important because we know that misinformation is going out there. Because it was put into the local plan, until the local plan is changed, there is a presumption under planning policy that that site is developable. It still has to go through a planning committee, so it has to fit planning policy, But if the council was to turn down a planning application on that site, it would have to have good planning grounds. And the fact that it was put into the local plan for development means that we could be challenged by the planning inspector if they say, but it's planning policy. Now, lots of people want it taken out. I'm not on the planning committee, so I don't have to worry about being conflicted by predetermination. If I was able to work a magic wand tomorrow, I'd take it out because I voted against it in the first place, and I'd happily do that again. But until the local plan is enacted, we are really limited in what we can do. So we're very conscious of the traffic issues, the nature issues, the overdevelopment issues, all the worries that people have got. But if somebody owns a piece of land and the policy says, because the policy was set under the last council, it can be developed, we've got to have very strong grounds not to. So that's the current situation. We do hear all of those issues. We're looking at all the options that are available. We have heard people saying, if I was running the council, I would stop it now. It's not as simple as that. It never is. So please be assured we are looking at all of the options, but we also have to be fair to the people that own the land. If you've got somebody that spent a lot of money because they followed policy and said the policy says this can be developed, and then we turn around and go, well, we just don't like it, we have to have legal grounds to do that. So yeah, watch this space. Some lovely messages there about being back in control, which is nice. Michael at 12:34, and I'm really sorry, we're going way back. We're not going to cover everything, but I'll try my hardest, has asked about youth centres. Some of you might know I run a youth club myself. It was a youth club that was closed under a previous council. We reopened it. It's run entirely by volunteers. I'm passionate about youth centres. I'm passionate about youth services. And the reason I'm passionate about them is because we have young people that are making mistakes in their lives, and we have the opportunity to get to them before they get involved in things that are going to take them down the wrong path. Now, youth clubs are not the only way of doing it. There's loads of brilliant work that's being done in communities through sports organisations, through football clubs, through outreach. But there is a youth review coming up. I am worried that under the previous plans, with the cuts that are expected to come through, we could be looking at further reduction in that service, but we will be working our hardest to try and make sure that communities have got services for young people. They are so important. I'll give you a quick anecdote. We had a young person came into our youth club a few months ago who hadn't told anybody at all that they were thinking of taking their own life. Where would they have gone if they hadn't had a youth club? So it's not just areas of deprivation, it's areas where kids have problems wherever they are. And I think we owe it to them to give them a chance. So we'll do whatever we can. But, we also have to be mindful that this massive funding cut comes along. We've got to find ways of doing it smarter and doing it with our communities. So if you've got the chance to volunteer at a youth club, please go and help, because they are great places to keep yourself young. So Doug has asked questions about Roadworks. Doug at 12:36. Roadworks, we love to hate them, don't we? But we need roadworks if we want good roads. And it's difficult when we complain about potholes, but actually we want our roads fixed. The Oakdale New Inn roadworks are moving apace. They are going to be finished. I can't give you the date they're going to be finished, but there's lots of work going on, and I'm expecting them to be done over the summer. So, please bear with us. Roadworks are not put in without them being a need for them. And I just want to take it a little bit wider. A lot of people complain about why roadworks happen all at the same time. Some of the roadworks happen that are scheduled, like this one. It's a sort of 12, 18-week cycle. It takes time to actually get everything in place. There's a lot of stuff that happens under the roads that we don't see. There's lots of things that we're reliant on supply chains and people being available to do the next step of the work. But very often there will be an emergency piece of roadworks, a water main bursting or something like that. And that can cause complete chaos, but we have to deal with it. And if the road is already dug up somewhere else, we could just stop and move. But actually, that isn't going to make things any better because you can't pack those old roadworks away. So we know it's frustrating. We know everybody sort of sends each other messages saying, bloody council. But, you know, we're working as fast as we can. And the goal is to get people moving more easily through these difficult junctions. The roadworks at New Inn are part of the Transforming Cities programme, and that is about trying to give people more choices about how they move about. So bear with us, Doug. We'll get it done as quickly as we possibly can. Question about climate change, because I think it's really important we make sure we cover that. Zoe has asked the question about, will the councillors be provided with the Acting on Climate Change? About 6 months ago, the head of climate change set up some amazing pieces of training for all councillors. There were 76 councillors. Only 17 of those councillors registered to do the training. So the training was paused because people weren't engaging with it, and we were really upset because it is an absolute key driver. We have to reach net zero, and we have to change the way that we do everything. So we have got within the new councillors training, and when we say new councillors, that's all of us, not just the ones who are elected for the first time. There is a training session that all councillors have been asked to attend on the climate emergency and the council's response. All councillors have access to be able to read all of the documentation, either through the website or through a programme that we have that stores all of our documents from meetings. The other thing that we've done is we are changing the focus of our place committee to be climate focused. So it's not everything else. We're going to move some of the things that were previously covered by place into the main scrutiny board so that the team can focus around climate. And what we've also done is that we have worked with the chair of the place committee to agree that that committee should have external people on it, not as voting members, because the democratic process needs to be done by elected members, but to have bodies that are able to sit on there as advisors and as contributors to the work that they're doing. So they will be having a really sharp focus on delivery. And I have to say, certainly in my group, I've got 28 Lib Dem councillors. There was a bit of a battle for who wanted to be on that committee because it is something that we're absolutely passionate about. So although I can't tell you when they'll be provided with a document, they've all got access to it and they've all been asked to come for training. So let me see, what else have we got? Peter Rusco has asked some questions about active travel. 12:39. So active travel is almost like, you know, Marmite, isn't it? Some people love it, some people hate it. Some of the programs that were put in place during our first administration the ball had started to be rolled by previous councils, cross-party. Everybody agrees that if we're going to deal with congestion, air pollution and the climate emergency, we've got to give people choices to travel in different ways. Some of the initiatives weren't working, and so it was quite right that the Conservative Council reversed them. Some of them appear to have been reversed for political reasons, and that's not really great. We are going to be looking at where people want those schemes back, how we can do that in a way that's inclusive. But one of the things we want to be really clear about is that people need to be comfortable with those schemes, so they will have proper consultation if they're coming back. We're not just going to, you know, flip-flop between we did it, they reversed it, we reversed their decision. That wouldn't be helpful. What we need to do is make sure that it's the right decisions. But active travel is hugely important. The council just secured another 3.8 million, I think it was, for active travel schemes, and we will actively look for more and more. Active travel is not just cycling, it's walking, it's, you know, micro mobility, it's, you know, that first and last mile onto your bus and your train. So those things are really important, and we were doing everything we can. I am running late. I have another meeting to get to, but I reckon we've got time for one more question, if that's okay. I'm trying to look at something which we haven't really covered. So where are we? Let's see what I can find here. Susan Stockwell, 1240, has asked some questions about security. So wants to know whether people can have the security guards that we have. So I think there's two questions here. I probably would challenge, we have security guards, bus passengers don't. We don't have security guards because we need security guards. I think it's more about making sure that, people can't run amok in the council building. That's fair enough. We need to make the place safe. So my personal view is having security guards around doesn't necessarily make you safe. And I think it's about making the bus station and the square feel different. I had a great meeting with the Police and Crime Commissioner last Friday, and talking about how do we make places feel safe. And of course, one of the options is to have more visible policing, is to have more visible CSAS officers, which are our council security people. But another way of making things safe is to make them more livable. So you can build places to make them safer, but having more people around and having better lighting and having more action and having people living in places rather than living somewhere else, traveling in and then traveling through, can actually make it feel a lot safer. So whilst there are short-term issues with making sure that Poole Bus Station, Bournemouth Square and other places are safe and secure, the fundamental answer is not to stick security guards everywhere. It's to actually put people living, working, playing, studying within the town centres, so that the town centres have got eyes and ears and people moving through it in a way that is not allowing it to become a place that gets taken over by people who perhaps we wouldn't want to have there. There is work to be done on some of the individuals that we see sort of hanging about that don't seem to be adding much value. And that's a really complicated piece of work. But, homeless, rough sleeping is down. That is a good thing. Antisocial behaviour is down, but there is still a long way to go. So bear with us. I'm going to say bear with us a few times, but we will get there, and we will be asking you what you think the answer is. But I would just stress, chucking more money at a problem doesn't always give you the answers you want. They just leave you with a bigger debt. And we've been left with a big debt for the council. We've got to tighten our apron strings. We've got to make sure that we're living within our means, and that might mean doing things a bit differently. So we will be trying things that are changing the experience rather than just chucking more cash at everything. So it's gone at 1 o'clock. I've loved having the chance to come back and talk to you. I'm sure we'll have plenty more opportunities to do so. I'm really sorry for all the questions we haven't got back to. I'd love to say I'll come back to them all this afternoon, but I'm back to back until about 9 o'clock tonight, so it's unrealistic. But do come back on and ask the question again, and hopefully some of the questions will answer themselves as we go through our consultations and show you what we're going to do differently. So thank you so much for your time.